Every firm says their people first, but we mean it. At West Monroe, you not only own your career, you become a company owner on day one. As a 100% employee-owned consulting firm, we all have a stake in our company's performance, and we all share in the success. We're looking for people who bring diverse opinions to the table and who set aside ego to champion great ideas, no matter who comes up with them. Start owning your career today at westmonroe.com/careers.
Gearing up for the warmer days ahead? If that includes shopping for a reliable new car, SUV, or truck, there's no better time or place than Toyota's We Make It Easy sales event. You'll find great deals like huge cashback offers, low APRs, and low payment leases on many of Toyota's most popular models, including Camry, Corolla, Prius Prime, Highlander, and even Supra. So see your Toyota dealer today. We make it easy. Toyota, let's go places.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. What's up, everybody, and greetings from Sin City. We've been really going hard on the financials of Jeffrey Epstein and the overall conversation about how terrible and bad money laundering is for the rest of us. Today we're going to continue on that path, except we're going to bounce away from the Virgin Islands and the United States and the tax havens that we've been discussing mainly here, and we're going to jump across the pond and we're going to talk about Luxembourg a little bit. Now, Luxembourg is one of the biggest tax havens in the entire world. When we think of tax havens, we usually think of places like the Cayman Islands, USVI, British Virgin Islands, places like that, right? You wouldn't think that a small little duchy in Europe, such as Luxembourg, would account for so much of this offshore nonsense, but it does. And there's a new investigation, kind of like the FinCen files almost, and it is hashtag Openlux. And it's a look into the transparency and the manipulation of the system within Luxembourg. So I thought that would be a good idea to add to the catalog, and it will also help us understand a little bit more how all of these things are connected, right? The worldwide money system, the financial system, is as connected as anything in the whole entire world. So when these people are stashing money or not paying their taxes on this money, it affects everybody, right? So you add that to the already bubbling cauldron that we have of Jeffrey Epstein, and it shows you how somebody like Jeffrey Epstein was able to manipulate the system for decades and move this money around with nobody being the wiser. And as we continue to paint that picture, it's rather obvious that this whole entire thing was set up for people like Epstein to do exactly what he did. So let's jump into this article from promarket.org. And let's see what the authors, Jose Antonio Ocampo and Tommaso Fascio, have to say. Headline: Openlux, why the era of financial secrecy needs to end. And I like that headline right off the bat, right? Financial secrecy. If we're all being logged and, we have to tell the government about our financial transactions, why should these people be any different? What, because they have a few bucks? Really, the real reason is they're exempt because they're the ones who put these politicians into office. What, you think it's your little vote that counted? You think when you're sitting home around your table and you got your mail-in ballots this year and they told you that if you went and voted at the polling place that you'd get Ebola or fall over, die, whatever it may be, you really think those votes counted? Come on. And I don't just mean this year, okay? Our votes don't mean shit. It's the man with the most money that usually wins. And these hedgies and these banksters, they bankroll both sides of the aisle. Because at the end of the day, they don't care, right? They care about making sure that the laws that are put on the books are beneficial to them. So they're the bagmen. It's just like the banks traditionally have funded every side of every war, right? No different here. The Openlux investigation has shown that Luxembourg, a country half the size of Delaware, but with 55,000 offshore companies, managing assets worth at least $6 trillion, is a major tax haven operating in the heart of the European Union. Now, we usually go hard in the paint on America here because you all know how I feel about cleaning up my own backyard before I'm popping my head over my wall and yelling at my neighbor. But it's important that we understand that this is not just happening in America. This is a very, very big problem in the European Union. And a place like Luxembourg is the beating heart of it almost, right? So it's important that we understand that this is a worldwide problem. And all of our governments need to work together to stop it. And that's where the problem is, right? Why would these elected officials want to stop something so beneficial to them? Openlux, conducted by the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project and other media outlets, is just the latest in a series of investigations shedding light on the offshore financial system, costing governments around the world close to $500 billion each year in lost income and corporate tax revenues. So you see, what happens is you have all of these corporations and these executives for these corporations. They'll come out and they'll get people whipped up over stuff like this, right? Oh, well, we're paying too much in taxes and it's communism. Meanwhile, they're not paying nothing in taxes and they're manipulating the argument between left and right into a situation that, once again, is beneficial to them. These people know what they're doing. They definitely know what they're doing. And it affects us all. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. $500 billion in lost income and corporate tax revenues? Think about what that $500 billion could do for the poorest amongst us. What if that money was repurposed? What if these people just paid, I know this is a cliche statement, but what if they just paid their fair share? They can't do that though, because that is below them. The system is set up for them to not have to do that, right? So why would they? As much as I want to be mad at the scumbags using these loopholes and manipulating the system and laundering all this money, the people that allow them to do it are just as culpable, in my opinion. The use of offshore structures allows not only the real ownership of wealth to remain hidden, but also its location and perhaps its very existence. This same secrecy also creates fertile ground for tax evasion, avoidance, and for financial crime deals, unquantifiable political damage as secrecy-shrouded capital infiltrates the Western political system. And look, I remember growing up, people always said, oh, America, that can't happen here. When I was a kid, the terrorism that would happen around the world. Oh, this is America. That'll never happen here. And America, in its arrogance, didn't realize that, yes, it could happen here, okay? And if you think that this disgusting money that's coming in from these oligarchs, these drug dealers, these human traffickers, and other undesirables isn't finding its way into the pockets of our politicians, you are not paying attention. Do I need to read the article again, going through all of the people that Jeffrey Epstein donated to that have political positions? Chuck Schumer, I'm looking at you, pal. Until the 2008 financial crisis, there were few political brakes on the expansion of tax havens. You don't think that played a part in it, huh? Nah, these tax havens and all of these bubbles, none of that had anything to do with the corruption in the financial sector. Let's remember now, nobody went to jail in 2008 for this, while your mom and dad were counting pennies at the kitchen table. Governments then came under pressure to close large budget deficits and to placate voters furious about taxpayer-funded bank bailouts and the ability of multinationals and the wealthy to escape paying their fair share, widening inequality in both cases. And this is what I talk about when I say inequality. When they talk about it in the legacy media, what they're trying to do is get you jazzed up against your neighbor who might have a nicer house than you. That is not the problem, okay? The banksters are the problem. The hedgies are the problem. Just take a look at what happened with Wall Street bets. The hedgies took it in the shorts for a couple of days, and then what? The manipulation began. The elites circled the wagons, right? Oh, we can't have our other elites losing any money. Let's circle the wagons. And that's what they do. And how do you think the inequality continues to increase? People like Jeff Bezos becoming so rich during this pandemic. The epicness of the transfer of wealth from the bottom up during this pandemic cannot be understated. It is gross, it is disgusting, and it should be talked about a lot more. The fight against tax evasion became a political priority in rich countries, and the pressure on tax havens mounted. Cash-strapped Western nations started prosecuting Swiss banks for facilitating tax evasion, and disclosure of tax evaders' details became a condition for settling these prosecutions. Now you notice, none of these governments gave a lick before, right? But the second their bottom line started to be affected, the second the financial crunch started, and they couldn't make their deadline or their bottom line, oh, it's a problem now. But when you're getting screwed, when your children are getting screwed, no big deal. No big deal. Just take it in the pants. Get up and go to work. It's no big deal. That's your lot in life, folks. Your lot is to just get up, go to work, and do what they tell you to do, and never, ever think about getting 1 inch ahead. At a summit held in April 2009, G20 countries urged each tax haven to sign at least 12 information exchange treaties under the threat of economic sanctions. Between the summit and the end of 2009, the world's tax havens signed a total of more than 300 treaties. And look what it took for that to happen, folks. The whole entire system had to collapse. The whole thing had to come tumbling down on its head. Now, that was 2009. We're in 2021, and you see all of these other bubbles starting to form. You see all of these other bubbles ready to pop. And you have people coming out and acting like everything's fine. Nothing is fine. We are still on a very, 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 very sloped path. The era of banking secrecy was over. Along came the OECD Common Reporting Standard, a regimen to exchange financial information automatically across borders so as to help tax authorities track the offshore holdings of their taxpayers. That's a good thing, right? And again, I wish that after 2009, when they put all of these things into effect, that they would have really put some serious laws on the books that had teeth. Because again, they can blow smoke up our ass all they want, but at the end of the day, results matter. And none of these people went to prison for what they did. And the EU's fifth anti-money laundering directive, requiring all member states to set up centralized register of ultimate or so-called beneficial owners of companies and make this information available to the public. So we see something like that going on in the United States now as well. That was added into the new AML law that was passed recently, and we'll see how it's put into effect, right? I mean, I know that it's very cynical of me, but I just don't have any faith in Congress, the Senate, or the system as a whole at this point. So I take a wait-and-see approach, right? I will wait and see what these people do as far as Congress and the Senate and the new administration. And we'll we'll play it by ear, right? We'll take it day by day, decision by decision, and we'll see what the lay of the land is in a little while. But it certainly doesn't look like much is going to change to me, folks, unfortunately. In this type of register, that journalists working on the hashtag Openlux investigation scrape to identify a system of phantom companies without offices or employees created by billionaires, multinationals, sportsmen, artists, high-ranking politicians, and even royal families sure does sound a lot like the rest of these financial schemes and plots that we've heard about. Paradise Papers, Luanda leaks, it goes on and on and on and on. How many of these leaks have to come out before people really understand what's going on here? You see, you can argue one way or the other about, things that aren't proven, right? You can't argue about this. It's a fact that people with this kind of money are manipulating the financial system for a few more bucks. All of them, it would seem like. The revelations underline that despite undeniable progress in terms of transparency, there is still considerable work to be done in the fight against tax avoidance and evasion, including in the European Union, which is happy to denounce harmful tax practices in non-EU countries, but not to recognize that some of its member states are tax havens. And that's a big problem, right? Like I said earlier, you got to clean up your own lawn before you're worried about what your neighbors have going on. If your whole entire backyard's a mess, you shouldn't worry that your neighbor has a tree with some overgrown palm fronds on it, right? And the EU definitely is one of those bodies that, highbrow society mannerisms. Looking down their nose at people and, we do things the proper way here in the EU, while everybody else doesn't. Meanwhile, they have just as many warts as anybody else, and they let people manipulate their system just as much as the United States, if not more. So you see, the problem is not just the United States, not just the European Union. This is a worldwide problem that needs worldwide solutions. Progress in the implementation of registers of beneficial ownership in the EU is patchy, as 17 of 27 member states do not yet have a centralized register of the beneficial owners of companies that is available to the public. And only 5 of 27 member states have implemented a public register which is free to access. So it's all BS, right? It's just all BS once again. Only 5 of the 27 member states have implemented a public register. Oh, I wonder why. Could it be because the people that would be in the register are the ones who are funding the political system as well? Oh, I know that can't be it, right? That would never happen. There's never any corruption in the political system. People are hella naive if they think that this stuff doesn't go hand in hand. Beneficial ownership data is only useful if it is public, of good quality, and easy to access, so society can hold wrongdoers and governments to account. And that's the last thing they want, right? They want to act in their shroud of secrecy. They want to move in the shadows. They want to make these moves without anybody being the wiser. If they have to pay 1 cent more than they think they should, then it's a whole big problem, and that all the laws need to be struck from the books and then put back down again. That's basically what these people do, right? Obviously, that's a bit of hyperbole there, but these people are the kingmakers. They have the money. And if you look at the absurd amount of money it takes to win an election, the answer is right there staring you in the face. Do you think it's your vote that counts? Or do you think it's the bag of money dropped on someone's desk by people like this? The register in Luxembourg only employs 59 people to ensure compliance with the legal obligation to declare the beneficial owners of more than 100,000 entities. Various types of legal entities in Luxembourg are not required to register their legal ownership information, and other loopholes exist, which means that companies can continue to operate with absolute secrecy. And what do you think? Those loopholes we're putting there for me and you when we're doing our 1099 taxes, when we're writing off that we use our home office? Of course not, folks. These loopholes there's no loopholes for me and you. There's only loopholes for big time so-called elites. And the whole entire system is set up for them to continue to snatch the wealth from the rest of us. And when I say the rest of us, I don't mean, the communist working man. I mean all of us, bro. If you're making less than, $250,000, $300,000 a year, you're poor. Breaking news. I don't know if you know that or not, but I hate to break it to you. The Luxembourg Register is not alone in its failings. The UK's equivalent register, which since 2016 requires companies to disclose the people who own or control the company, has been subject to criticism for failing to compulsorily verify the information provided for company directors, beneficial owners, and persons filing the returns. Again, England is... Where do you think Wall Street came from, right? All of this financial nonsense was birthed in England. So... you want to talk about old, dark money? Paris and England are two fantastic places to start. And if you think that the old wealth in England is going to let anybody get in the way of them stealing from the rest of us, you have not been paying attention. These people do not care about me or you or anybody else who is not part of their gang. The FinCen Files investigation last December, which exposed how some of the world's biggest banks were at the center of a sprawling global money laundering industry, has shown how the current loopholes allow anonymous shell companies to launder money through the UK at a cost of $24 billion a year. Now, to my friends over in the UK, what could $24 billion a year do for the country right now? How many people are hurting? How many people are starving? How much food could $24 billion provide for people who need it? But guess what? That $24 billion, right in the pocket of the scumbags we talk about on a regular basis here on the podcast. Now, if that doesn't make you ill, if that doesn't make you want to curl up into the fetal position and cry yourself to sleep, I don't know what will. Because it's a daunting task, folks, to hold these people accountable. And the only way it's ever going to happen is if the legacy media digs in. Because they have the reach, right? We can only reach so many people. But unfortunately for us and society as a whole, legacy media is in on it. It's not that there is no demand for accurate information. More than 6 billion requests to access the UK company register were made in 2018, a huge increase from when paywalls were still in place, circa 6 million. But things are slowly starting to improve in the EU and elsewhere. That is the case, right? We see some light at the end of the tunnel. But again, I remain skeptical because I don't trust the politicians. I don't trust the people we sent to Washington, D.C., and I don't trust the people that are in Brussels. I don't trust the people in London. I don't trust any of these people in the power structure. I think there needs to be an absolute shakeup. Do we really need everybody who's a politician to have graduated from Harvard? We don't need any electricians or plumbers or school teachers or anything like that, huh? Everybody has to be a so-called member of the elite? The UK government has now pledged to address the deficiency in its system by introducing compulsory identity verification to help trace people who are committing fraud or money laundering, and to giving Companies House greater powers to query, investigate, and remove false information. Look, I'll never shit talk progress, right? If people are trying to make some progress, it's a good thing. But that doesn't mean we can't be highly critical of the process. We need to hold them to a higher standard because, as we have seen with our investigation for the last some odd months into this financial shit show, This affects all of us and all of our communities. So while we might say, oh, well, it's just some rich people stealing, that's just the way it goes, when you look at the overall picture and you see how much of an impact it has on the poorest amongst us, it's not something we can ignore anymore. I mean, what do you think $24 billion in a place like Darfur, Sudan would do? The G20 OECD mandated process looking at reforming the century-old system of taxation of multinationals is negotiating proposals for a global minimum tax, with the U.S. administration now back at the table to try and stop what has been a destructive global race to the bottom on corporate taxation. And this is something that I have to admit I used to be against. I used to be against these extra taxes. I used to think that big business was a good thing for the country, right? Oh, yeah, they care about their people. Then 2009 hit, and I learned a whole lot about big business. And I've learned a whole lot more since then. So, yeah, you know what? Sorry. Save the crocodile tears. Pay your fair share. And these multinational corporate taxes, they need to get slapped in the mouth with them. You really think it's okay for a company like Apple to be involved with tax havens and to be having their products made by people basically enslaved? I'm not okay with it, folks. Honestly, I think it's disgusting, and there needs to be a reckoning. President Biden has pledged during his campaign to raise the U.S. minimum tax on U.S. corporations' foreign earnings, known as global intangible low tax income, or GILTI. Ironic that that's the moniker for it, huh? GILTI, GILTI, to 21%. This measure would not only have the merit of increasing the country's fiscal resources, it would also provide the political support for other countries' policymakers to follow suit. That's fine, and I hope that 46 does that. But here's the deal. I don't want that money going to the Treasury Department. That money should go into some sort of trust fund or some sort of initiative and be reinvested into poor communities. What would $24 billion do for your poor community in your city? I know it would do a whole hell of a lot here in Las Vegas. All you have to do is go down the Boulder Highway and take a look at what's going on down there, take a walk down the street, and it looks like that's where The Walking Dead started. The virus from The Walking Dead cracked off on Boulder Highway, and that's what happened down there, because all of those people are in terrible shape. And if you don't think that we could use more resources here in Nevada in the inner city, you're sorely mistaken. And I know that that's the case elsewhere. So why not all of these fines and all of these taxes? Why not put that back into our communities? I'll tell you why, because they don't care. That money that they fine these people for, or that they take from them in taxes, where do you think it ends up? Probably in bombs being dropped on poor civilians in Yemen. The veil of secrecy surrounding multinational tax affairs is also about to come down in the EU, which under the current presidency of Portugal is about to approve a transparency measure requiring multinationals to public country-by-country data on how much profit is recorded and how much tax is paid by multinationals in each of the member states. Now that's a good idea, right? Let's get a spreadsheet going. If everything we do is being logged, if every phone call we send out or text we send out is being collected via metadata, why shouldn't all of these people and their financials be tracked as well, considering they've proven time and time again that they can't be trusted? It's like the analogy I use. It's like having a kid, right? You think you have a good kid, and you're like, all right, 16, 17 years old, you don't need to have a curfew. You've never been in trouble before. Well, your kid goes out, you get a phone call from the cops. They got busted for a curfew ticket while drinking. Now, of course, you have to enact a curfew on your child, right? Because proven that they can't do the right thing. It's the same thing here. These idiots want to act like children. They should be treated like children. Increasing numbers of companies like Vodafone and Shell publish this information voluntarily. And there are also mandatory reporting standards for EU banks and some sector companies. A level playing field measure putting multinationals on par with smaller domestic businesses will allow everyone, including citizens, policymakers, journalists, and researchers, to hold multinationals to account. That's all I've ever been asking for, right? Hold these people to account. They operate like their own governments. That's how these Silicon Valley idiots operate, and all these big businesses, these oligarchs, these kleptocrats, these corptocrats. They act like the laws are for us and not for them. Well, newsflash, that's about to change. Pressure is now mounting for the U.S. Congress to enact a similar piece of legislation. With every additional transparency measure, the world is slowly building a global data collection infrastructure on asset and wealth ownership, and that is why they're so terrified. That's why they want you to hate each other. They understand the stakes. What do you think? All of these big businesses woke up one day and decided, oh, well, we're woke now. We're going to support all of these movements. Or do you think that the lawyers and the execs in the back room all looked at each other after Occupy Wall Street and understood that division was their best plan? And to get into something like this that is so divisive, well, what better way, what better lever to use than to keep people divided? And it works out for them in the end, because when we're fighting with each other over stupid nonsense, these people are busy stealing our wealth. This should ultimately be combined together at a global level, starting with asset registers at national or regional level to link the underlying transparency mechanisms to provide a vital tool against illicit financial flows, by ending impunity for hiding and using the proceeds of crime, and for removing legitimate income and profits from the economy in which they arise for tax purposes. So basically what's happening is every single time these people are involved in laundering this money or moving this dirty money, they're stealing it from you. That's why you should be pissed, one of the reasons. Secondly, they're enabling people like Jeffrey Epstein. And if you think Epstein is the only person like that these people are enabling, boy, you're in for a rude awakening, because there are, unfortunately, folks, as Dr. DeLay laid out here on the podcast, a lot of people like Jeffrey Epstein. The phrase "sunlight is the best disinfectant" was introduced to American legal discourse by Justice Louis Brandeis in the early 20th century. The hashtag Openlux investigation will once again remind governments across the world of its importance as they look to plug revenue gaps left by COVID-19 spending and ensure that multinationals and wealthy individuals pay their fair share. As in the aftermath of the 2008 crisis, expect the post-pandemic recovery to take a strong look at the financial secrecy. Well, that's a great thing, right? But did it really take a pandemic to do that? And once again, the cynic in me says, is the only reason that they're looking at this with a closer eye now is because of those budget shortfalls? Are they looking for ways to replace that money that was spent during this pandemic? Probably, folks. Because, it's just a coincidence that all of a sudden now they care? This has been going on for how long? How long have we known about the money laundering and the tax evasion that was going on in places like Luxembourg? But now, all of a sudden, they're gung-ho to get involved? Sure strikes me as a pretty quality plan, right? For them to use this pandemic to try and create some, more windfalls for themselves, I guess you should say. Now, I get it. There's a big budget gap for everybody. I mean, even the most powerful economies in the world, like the United States or China, big problems. So I know that a lot of smaller economies are definitely up against it. But don't act like, all of a sudden now everyone's concerned about money laundering because everyone's a good guy. Now it's because there's budget shortfalls. So they're being forced into action. And while I'll take it, right? Any action's a good thing. Don't try and come out and act like it's because you care about the money laundering. What you care about is fixing your shortfalls. So we'll see how this all breaks with 46 in office now and with the lay of the land starting to change. I really hope that this 25% tax gets slapped on these multinationals too. I can't believe I'm even saying that, right? Because I'm not a big fan of all of the needless taxation that we see on a regular basis in most regards. But if anybody deserves to get slapped in the mouth with a bunch of taxes, it's these multinational corporations. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, I will be back later on tonight with the Daily Drop, and we'll go through our Mention It Monday segment as well. Have a great day, everybody.
For confidence in your financial plan, look for a CFP professional. When your financial advisor earns the CFP certification, it means he or she is trained to provide ethical financial planning across a holistic range of topics, from retirement and investing to taxes and estate planning, all in your best interest. So, with a CFP professional, you'll feel confident in your financial plan today and tomorrow. 3 letters do make a difference. Visit letsmakeaplan.org to find your CFP professional.
Nature makes the things we love. That's why Walmart and the Walmart Foundation are committed to help protect, manage, or restore at least 50 million acres of land and 1 million square miles of ocean by 2030.